The alert klaxons pierced through the quiet hum of the Galactic Council's monitoring station. Red warning lights bathed the pristine white walls in an ominous crimson glow. Lieutenant Du Young's hands flew across the holographic interface, his eyes widening as he tracked the unknown vessel's trajectory. "Sir, unidentified ship entering Sector 7. It's bypassing all our outer defense grids," Du Young called out, his voice steady despite the growing tension in the room. The massive display screen showed a sleek vessel, its hull darker than the void of space itself, cutting through protected space like a knife through water. Commander Park Jia strode to the center of the command deck, her silver uniform gleaming under the emergency lights. "Open diplomatic channels on all frequencies. This is a restricted zone. They must respond or face consequences." The communications officer broadcast the standard first contact protocols in over 200 known languages. Seconds stretched into minutes. The strange ship maintained its course, silent and purposeful. "Ma'am, we're getting some readings now," Du Young reported, his face pale. "The ship's energy signature. It's unlike anything in our database. The power output alone suggests technology far beyond Council standards." The vessel's identification suddenly flashed across their screens. UES Thunderbolt. The AI translation matrix took mere moments to process the human language markings on its hull. Commander Park's blood ran cold. Humans? That's impossible. They're quarantined on their homeworld. The emergency alert spread through the station like wildfire. Junior officers rushed between terminals while senior staff accessed classified archives. The tension in the air grew thick enough to cut with a blade. Deep in the station's secure data vaults, ancient files were being unsealed. The truth about humanity's quarantine emerged in fragments of text and recorded meetings from centuries past. Species shows extreme territorial aggression, unprecedented technological advancement rate. Warlike tendencies make them unsuitable for galactic integration. Containment recommended until cultural evolution reaches acceptable parameters. Do Young watched in horror as more data streamed across his screen. "Commander, according to these records, 3 Council observation posts near human space went dark last month. All contact lost. The Thunderbolt's presence was no accident. This was a deliberate incursion into Council space." Commander Park activated the station's quantum communicator, linking directly to the Council chambers on the capital world. The faces of a dozen species appeared, their alien features twisted with concern. "Honorable Council members," Park began, her voice grave, "I must report a Level 1 security breach. A human warship has entered protected space. They're not responding to hails, and their trajectory suggests they know exactly where they're going." Panic erupted in the Council chamber. The Vex representative's tentacles writhed in distress. "Impossible. The quarantine barrier has failed," Park finished. "And given the technology we're detecting, it likely failed long ago. We just didn't know it." The Thunderbolt's engines flared brilliant blue as it accelerated, leaving the monitoring station behind. Their sensors could barely track its speed. "It's heading deeper into Council space," Du Young reported. "At their current velocity, they'll reach the core worlds in less than 2 days." The Council members argued amongst themselves, centuries of complacency shattered by humanity's arrival. Their carefully maintained galactic order faced its greatest challenge. Commander Park watched the Thunderbolt disappear from their screens, a sense of dread settling in her stomach. The quarantine had been meant to protect the galaxy from humanity. But as she studied the ship's capabilities, a different question formed in her mind. Had the quarantine instead protected humanity while they grew stronger than anyone could have imagined? The station's alarms continued their mournful wail as the first reports of missing patrol ships began to arrive. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and nothing would ever be the same. Do Young's console beeped one final time before the Thunderbolt vanished completely from their sensors. His voice was barely a whisper as he read the last data packet. "Ma'am, they're not alone. I'm detecting more human ships entering the sector." The age of isolation was over. The species that the Council had tried to cage had broken free, and they wanted answers. Commander Lee Tawri's fingers drummed against the polished surface of his command console. The massive holographic display before him showed the defensive grid of the Ardent system, or what remained of it. Another patrol ship had vanished, leaving only static and silence in its wake. "Show me the last transmission again," he ordered, his voice tight with frustration. The AI complied, projecting a grainy recording. The Council patrol vessel appeared normal at first, then a shadow passed over its hull. In the next frame, the ship simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris field, just gone. "Sir, we're detecting anomalous readings in Sector 12, Lieutenant Kang reported from her station. Energy signatures matched the human vessel. The UES Thunderbolt had become a ghost story among Council forces. It appeared and disappeared at will, bypassing the most sophisticated detection systems ever created. Traditional sensors proved useless against whatever technology the humans had developed during their isolation. All ships, maintain formation Delta," Lee commanded. "Do not engage without direct orders." He wouldn't lose any more crews to this phantom. The tactical display suddenly erupted with warnings. The Thunderbolt materialized less than 10,000 kilometers from their position, its dark hull absorbing nearby starlight. Before anyone could react, it vanished again, reappearing deep within the defense perimeter. "Impossible," Lee muttered. "No ship can jump that precisely through active defense fields." But the humans were rewriting the rules of space combat with every encounter. Security footage recovered from the lost patrol ships painted a terrifying picture. The human vessel moved in ways that violated known physics. It accelerated without apparent thrust, changed direction instantly, and seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. "Commander, incoming transmission." Kang's voice cracked with surprise. It's from the Thunderbolt." Lee straightened in his chair. "Put it through." The message was short, text only. "Stand down your forces. We mean no harm to those who don't interfere." "Sir," energy spike. Another officer shouted. There. The Thunderbolt appeared directly ahead of their formation. Its size became apparent now, nearly twice as large as their heaviest battlecruiser. Weapon ports lined its hull, but they remained closed. A warning, not a threat. Lee studied the vessel through the viewport. Its design was alien to Council sensibilities, all sharp angles and predatory intent. This was a warship built by a species that understood combat at a fundamental level. "New contact," Kang called out. 3 Council destroyers just dropped out of FTL. They're charging weapons. "Belay that order," Lee shouted into the comm, but it was too late. The destroyers opened fire, their energy beams slicing through space toward the Thunderbolt. What happened next defied explanation. The human ship seemed to blur, as if reality itself couldn't quite hold its form. The destroyers' attacks passed through empty space. The Thunderbolt reappeared behind them, and 3 precise shots from previously hidden weapons left the Council ships drifting, their systems offline but crews intact. "Message from the Thunderbolt, sir," Kang said quietly. "They say, final warning." Lee watched as the human vessel vanished once more, leaving his forces intact but humbled. They had built their defenses to stop ships from moving through normal space. The Thunderbolt didn't seem bound by those limitations. "Send word to command," he ordered. "The quarantine protocols have failed. The humans aren't contained. They never were. They've been watching, learning, and preparing. And now they want answers for what we did to them." As his crew began composing the report, Lee reviewed the sensor data from their encounter. The Thunderbolt's technology wasn't just advanced. It represented a completely different approach to space travel and combat. The Council had spent centuries convinced of their superiority, only to discover they'd been playing a game while humans mastered the true rules of war. The ghost ship was showing them the future, whether they were ready for it or not. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the bridge viewport of the UES Thunderbolt. Captain Kim Yoo-jin stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the void with eyes that had seen too much. The bridge crew worked in focused silence, each member knowing the weight of their mission. 6 months earlier, the research vessel Morning Star had vanished during a routine stellar mapping operation. 300 civilians, scientists, families, children, gone without a trace. For weeks, the official story was that they'd suffered a catastrophic drive failure. Then the intelligence started trickling in. Navigation. Status report, Kim commanded, her voice carrying the authority of 15 years in the United Earth Fleet. We're tracking the energy signature through the Council's supposedly secure channels. Captain, Lieutenant Park responded from his station. The Morning Star's quantum beacon is weak, but it's there. They're holding our people in a research facility in the Helios sector. Kim's jaw tightened. The Council had maintained their quarantine of humanity for centuries, claiming it was for the galaxy's protection. Now they knew the truth. Humans had been treated like lab specimens, studied and experimented on in secret. Tactical, show me the facility's defenses, she ordered. The holographic display sprang to life, revealing layers of security that would have seemed impenetrable to less advanced species. Their shields are based on outdated containment theories. Chief Weapons Officer Lee reported with a hint of professional disdain. They still think we're limited to conventional physics. The Thunderbolt's quantum drive hummed beneath their feet, a reminder of how far humanity had come while in isolation. What the Council saw as barbaric aggression had driven humans to push the boundaries of science and engineering. Every attempt to contain them had only made them stronger. Message from Earth Command, Captain, Communications Officer Choi announced. They've confirmed the presence of Council research teams at 3 other black sites. This goes deeper than we thought. Kim moved to the tactical display, studying the facility's layout. How many of our people are they holding? Bioscans show at least 80 humans in suspended animation. Lieutenant Park answered. Genetic markers match some of the Morning Star's crew. The bridge fell silent. 80 out of 300. Kim refused to think about what that meant for the others. They're moving the subjects. Sensors Officer Han suddenly reported. Multiple stasis pods being loaded onto transport vessels. They know we're coming, Kim said quietly. Signal the rest of the fleet. We move now. The Thunderbolt's stealth systems engaged, bending space itself around the massive warship. To Council sensors, they simply ceased to exist. Kim watched as her crew prepared for combat with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this moment since the first hints of Council interference had emerged. All hands, battle stations, Kim announced shipwide. This is not a revenge mission. We are here to rescue our people and show the Council that their containment policy was a mistake. Minimize casualties, but do not hesitate if fired upon. The age of hiding is over. The Thunderbolt sliced through the void, its quantum drive allowing it to ignore the traditional laws of physics. Council ships scrambled to respond as their sensors finally detected the human vessel, but it was too late. Multiple contacts, Tactical reported. Council warships moving to intercept. Show them why humanity was never meant to be caged, Kim ordered. The Thunderbolt's advanced weapons came online, their very existence a testament to human ingenuity. They had turned the Council's quarantine into an advantage, developing technology that their would-be jailers couldn't comprehend. As her ship engaged the first Council vessels, Kim thought of the families waiting back on Earth, wondering what had happened to their loved ones on the Morning Star. The Council would learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their combat prowess. It was their unwillingness to abandon their own. Begin the rescue operation, she commanded. Let's bring our people home. The Thunderbolt moved like a predator among prey, its mission clear and its purpose absolute. The Council's greatest fear had come true. Humanity had broken free. But they would soon learn that humans could have been their greatest allies if only they had chosen cooperation over containment. The Grand Council chamber echoed with heated voices as representatives from 100 worlds argued their fate. High Counselor Baz Sumho stood at the central podium, his aged hands gripping its edges as reports of the human warship's activities flashed across the massive screen surrounding them. "Order," he commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We face an unprecedented crisis. The human vessel has breached our most secure systems and disabled our most advanced ships without a single casualty. They are showing both power and restraint." Admiral Han rose from his seat, his military decorations gleaming under the chamber's lights. Restraint. They'd violated our sovereign space, disabled our defenses, and demonstrated technology that threatens the very foundation of our society. We must respond with overwhelming force. The Admiral's supporters voiced their agreement, but Ambassador Kang quickly took the floor. "And start a war we cannot win. The humans have already proven our military technology is centuries behind theirs. We need dialogue, not conflict." As the debate raged, Junior Archivist Choi worked frantically at her terminal in the lower levels of the archive sector. Something about this crisis nagged at her memory. A file she glimpsed during her training, marked with the highest security classifications. Her fingers flew across the holographic interface, bypassing security protocols that hadn't been updated in decades. There, buried under layers of bureaucratic misdirection, she found it. "High Counselor," she called out, her voice trembling but determined. "I have information the Council needs to see." The chamber fell silent as Choi's discovery appeared on the main display. It was a human transmission, sent 15 years before their quarantine began. The message was simple, peaceful, a request for cultural exchange and mutual understanding. "This isn't possible," Admiral Han protested. "The quarantine was implemented because humans were deemed too aggressive for contact." "No," Choi said, her voice stronger now. "The records show this message was deliberately hidden. The quarantine recommendation came from a special committee, one heavily influenced by corporations interested in studying human technology without competition." The chamber erupted again. Species turned against species as centuries of lies unraveled. High Counselor Ba called for silence, but the truth was spreading like wildfire through the assembled representatives. "There's more," Choi continued. "Regular reports of human technological advancement were also suppressed. The committee knew the quarantine was failing but covered it up to protect their positions." Ambassador Kang moved to the center of the chamber. "We haven't been protecting the galaxy from humanity. We've been protecting our own power structure. And now we face a species that has survived our betrayal and emerged stronger than we could have imagined." The screens showed new footage of the Thunderbolt effortlessly evading Council defenses. The ship's capabilities made their most advanced technology look primitive in comparison. "They're not just here to show their strength," Bay realized aloud. "They're looking for something, or someone." Another junior officer rushed into the chamber, clutching a data crystal. "High Counselor, we've decoded part of their transmission pattern. They're tracking quantum signatures matching a civilian research vessel that disappeared 6 months ago." Understanding dawned on the assembled council members. The humans weren't invading. They were conducting a rescue operation. Their people had been taken, and now they had come to take them back. "It seems," Ba said heavily, "we face a choice. We can continue our failed policy of containment and risk open war with a superior force, or we can acknowledge our mistakes and attempt to make amends." The chamber was silent now, the weight of centuries of deception hanging heavy in the air. The humans had sent them a message once before, extending a hand in friendship. The Council had responded with isolation and experimentation. Now humanity had returned, not seeking revenge but justice, and the Council had to decide if they were wise enough to choose peace this time. Admiral Han sank back into his seat, his military bearing faltering as the truth settled in. Ambassador Kang's voice carried across the silent chamber. "We must contact them, not as superiors or jailers, but as equals who have much to answer for." High Counselor Bai nodded slowly. "And we must pray they are more forgiving than we have been." 300 Council warships filled the space around the high-end system's second moon. Lieutenant Song's fingers trembled as he monitored their tactical display. The UEA's Thunderbolt hung motionless before them, its dark hull absorbing the light from the nearby sun. All ships in position. Admiral Han's voice crackled through the comm. The human vessel is trapped. They have nowhere to run. On the Thunderbolt's bridge, Captain Kim watched the Council fleet's formation with calm interest. They still think in 2 dimensions, she noted to her tactical officer, even with all of space to work with. Final warning transmitted to the human vessel. Song reported. No response. The Council fleet's weapons powered up in unison, their energy signatures creating a web of deadly potential. Traditional physics suggested no ship could survive such concentrated firepower. Attack pattern Alpha, Admiral Han commanded. Fire at will. The void erupted with energy as hundreds of ships unleashed their arsenal. Song watched in anticipation, expecting to see the human vessel torn apart. Instead, the Thunderbolt shifted. There was no other word for it. Space itself seemed to bend around the ship. Impossible, Song whispered. The Thunderbolt's response came in the form of weapons unlike anything the Council had ever encountered. Quantum torpedoes phased through shields as if they didn't exist, their warheads rewriting the fabric of reality where they detonated. Graviton beams twisted space itself, crushing Council ships like paper toys. Evasive maneuvers, Han shouted, but the order came too late. Other species simply fled, their ships jumping to hyperspace as they realized the implications. Humanity hadn't just caught up during their isolation. They had surpassed the Council's capabilities entirely. Kim's final transmission cut through the disorder. We do not seek revenge. We want justice for our people and acknowledgement of these crimes. The choice is yours. Face the truth and work toward reconciliation, or continue denying reality while we reclaim what was taken from us. The Council's response split along moral lines. Some species immediately offered to help locate and return captured humans. Others fortified their borders, though they now understood the futility of trying to stop human ships. Commander Park stood before the Council, testifying about everything she had witnessed. The experiments, the cover-ups, the deliberate suppression of peaceful human contact attempts. We created the very situation we claimed to fear, she concluded. We treated them as specimens instead of equals. Now they've proven themselves to be far more advanced than we ever imagined. And yet, they still offer us a chance for peace. The message was clear. Humanity had emerged from isolation, not as the savages the Council had painted them to be, but as a species that had transcended traditional limitations. Their response to discovery and experimentation wasn't blind revenge. It was a calculated exposure of truth, letting the Council's own actions speak for themselves. As the evidence continued to pour in, those who had championed the quarantine found themselves facing questions they couldn't answer. The age of secrets was over, and a new era of galactic relations was about to begin. The neutral station hung in deep space, its crystalline structure reflecting starlight from a dozen nearby suns. Inside the Grand Assembly Hall, representatives from Earth stood face to face with the reformed Galactic Council. The moment carried the weight of centuries. Captain Kim and Ambassador Lee sat at one end of the massive table, their posture relaxed despite the historical gravity of the situation. The recovered colonists had been safely returned, though the scars of their ordeal would take time to heal. We are prepared to acknowledge all past transgressions, the new council leader announced, her voice carrying across the chamber. The quarantine, the experiments, the suppression of peaceful contact, all of it will be documented and made public. Ambassador Lee nodded slowly. Transparency is the foundation of trust, but acknowledgement is only the beginning. The negotiations had been surprisingly straightforward. Humanity's technological superiority meant they could have simply taken what they wanted. Instead, they chose diplomacy, a fact not lost on the Council representatives. All human space will be recognized as sovereign territory, the Council leader continued. No Council vessel may enter without explicit permission. Furthermore, we propose establishing joint research initiatives, conducted openly and ethically. Captain Kim allowed herself a small smile. The Council had finally learned the lesson they'd spent centuries avoiding. Cooperation achieved more than containment ever could. The terms were fair, even generous. Humanity would share some of their advancements, carefully selected technologies that wouldn't destabilize the galactic community. In return, they gained access to the Council's trade networks and cultural exchanges. There's an old saying among Council species, one of the elder delegates mentioned as the Accords were being prepared. Beware the species that masters war. They understand the true price of peace. The human representatives exchanged knowing looks. Their superior military technology had opened the door, but it was their restraint that had truly impressed the Council. The quarantine forced us to become self-reliant, Ambassador Lee explained. Every challenge made us stronger, more innovative, but it also taught us the value of independence and the importance of protecting our own. The signing ceremony began, each species adding their mark to the historic document. Human space was officially recognized, their right to self-governance enshrined in galactic law. As Captain Kim pressed her palm to the document, she thought of the Morning Star's crew and their sacrifice. Their ordeal had exposed the Council's corruption and paved the way for genuine peace. This is not an ending, she declared to the assembled delegates. It's an opportunity to build something new. We've all seen what isolation and fear can do. Let's discover what cooperation and trust can achieve. The station's AI recorded the historic moment as the last signatures were added. Humanity had emerged from centuries of quarantine not as conquered subjects or vengeful warriors, but as equals ready to share their knowledge. The Council delegates watched with newfound respect as the human representatives prepared to depart. The UES Thunderbolt waited outside, a reminder of humanity's power and their choice to use it wisely. The next century will be interesting, the Council leader mused. We feared them for so long, only to discover they were becoming what we should have been all along. As the humans boarded their ship, the stars seemed brighter somehow. A new age had begun, not through conquest or subjugation, but through the recognition that true strength lies in knowing when not to use it. The Thunderbolt's quantum drive engaged, and in a flash of light that defied conventional physics, they were gone. But this time, they would return not as intruders or threats, but as partners in a greater galactic community. Peace had been achieved not because humanity was weak, but because they were strong enough to choose it.